Now I'd like to introduce Vanessa Benton. She is the Deputy Chief of School Planning for SDP.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this Saturday morning. My name is Vanessa Benton. I'm the Deputy Chief of School Planning. This is our third community conversation around the facilities planning process. We're really excited to get started, and after the presentation, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Kim.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that warm welcome. And again, my name is Kim Sesko from Public Engagement Associates. Now let's walk you through some more Zoom reminders so we can have a productive and interactive meeting today. Now, many of you have probably used Zoom or some other web platform, but each of these platforms are different. You have a menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The most important one we want you to know about is the chat button. Please use the chat button throughout the program whenever you want to submit a question. We ask that you submit your questions in chat directly to Ask Me Questions. That should be towards the top of the chat. This is being monitored by our staff, and we will respond to what we can immediately in chat. We'll also collect questions that require more involved answers and respond to those later on in the program. So please submit your questions in chat whenever they come up throughout the day. There are a few other icons to the right of the chat, as you can see. If you would like to access closed captioning live transcript, you just click on that icon and it will launch our closed captioning on your screen. And finally, if you need to access interpretation, please click on the globe and choose the languages that are available for today. And if you are submitting questions in your native language, we will ensure that those are translated and responded to later. And next, let me share the goals for this meeting and all 9 meetings that we'll be doing in May for this community conversation process. And there are 5 goals that we have for this first phase of community engagement. First, we want to introduce the planning process, including project phases, roles, and the timeline. We want to share data and information related to the district school buildings, which you'll hear in presentations later this morning. And we'll explain how the district measures the quality of school buildings. Throughout the meeting, we're going to collect initial feedback from our community members, and we will show you how to find more detailed information about your school. So as you can see, this is a very important process for the community, parents, and others who care about the school district. So how are we going to accomplish all of this? On our agenda for today, it's very straightforward and it's built around 3 presentations. The first part will be an overview of the facilities planning process. Next, our presenter will cover a more detailed review of the phases and how the school district has evaluated all the school facilities. And there'll be a short poll after that presentation. And then finally, there will be a demonstration of the web tool the district has created so that you can view the data and evaluations for every school. You will also have access to this web tool during and after the meeting to explore the schools in your community. We want this to be a very interactive experience for you. There'll be opportunities for your input, including different polls and responding to your questions in chat. In addition, we also want to hear your comments directly from you after the formal presentation ends around 11:30 a.m. We'll open the meeting up to your comments, your questions, and your input. So the final half hour will be devoted entirely to listening to you and answering many of the questions that you have. We do have several guidelines we'd like for you to follow throughout the meeting. First, if you can just focus your questions on this facilities planning process. We won't be able to address all of the other important issues that are not related to this planning process in this particular meeting. So please focus those questions on the facilities planning process. Please be respectful to attendees, the project team, and district staff. Listen for understanding, even if you disagree. And if you have a follow-up question or comments after the program, you can send it to our email at fpp@philasd.org. This email is also going to be posted in chat for your convenience. So now we want you to hear a little bit about the presentation that we're presenting today. This will be the first part of a three-part presentation. I'm going to introduce Natalie Coots from WXY Studio, who has been a lead consultant for SDP during this process. And remember, if you have any questions, please submit them and ask me questions in the chat. For those of you who are participating in another language, you can put in your questions in your native language, and we will translate them later and respond to them after the meeting. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Kim, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for making the time this morning. So again, as Kim shared, my name is Natalie Kautz, and I am one of many on my team at WXY Studio. We are a planning firm that has supported a number of school districts on a number of different kinds of projects. And usually we provide support around facilitation and web development and project management. And now we are working with the School District of Philadelphia on the facilities planning process. So I'll be introducing the process in more detail and sharing a little bit of background and context, and sharing also how the process will unfold. So to start, what is the facilities planning process? So the facilities planning process, or FPP sometimes, as I'll refer to it, is an effort to proactively plan for the future of not only new school buildings, but also existing school buildings in the district. So currently we are in phase 1 of this year, of a year-long process. And phase 1 focuses on introducing the process and the data so that you all have as much information as possible to understand the challenges at the district level, to provide all students so that we can be ready for conversations in the fall, the meetings that will be at school-based meetings. And I'll share a lot of information specifically about how that will unfold in a moment. So the FPP is a critical part of the district's vision to provide all students with access to a great school and school building, which we know plays an important role in supporting student learning and students' overall experience in school. So before sharing more about the process, I'm going to share a little bit of district-wide information. So the School District of Philadelphia is the largest school district in Pennsylvania and enrolls over 190,000 students. It's important to note that the facilities planning process will only impact district-managed schools. So these include citywide, neighborhood, and special admit schools. And this is a total of 202 schools that are included in this process. So this means that this process does not include charter, alternative, and virtual schools. And schools that are currently undergoing major renovations are also not included in this process. Now to give you a quick look at the district's facilities, some quick facts. Currently, the district faces several challenges related to its school buildings, and we've outlined just a couple on this slide. So as I'm sure many of you on this call know, the district has an aging set of school buildings that have been used beyond their intended lifespan. So currently, the average age of a school building in the district is 70 years. The district also has a large amount of deferred maintenance or repairs that have been postponed over time. The district has nearly $5 billion in deferred maintenance or repairs. So over the last 10 years, to address some of these challenges, the district has worked to update school buildings over time and has opened 11 new schools. Another important piece of context is the district enrollment. So this is what we'll take a look at real quick now. So the district enrollment is the total number of students attending the district schools. So the chart on this page shows us changes in student enrollment since the school year 2012-2013. And it's important to note that this chart only shows enrollment for district managed schools, like I mentioned earlier. So this includes citywide schools, neighborhood schools, and special admit schools. And those are the same schools that are included in the facilities planning process. So this graph does not show any enrollment for charter schools, alternative schools, or virtual schools. So we can see in the chart that in the school year 2012-2013, enrollment for the district managed schools was roughly 140,000 students. And over the last several years, enrollment has decreased by 21,000 students. So that's down to 119,000 students in total. We can also see that enrollment has changed over time. And while that has happened, so has the number of district managed school buildings. So in the school year 2012-2013, the total number of district managed schools decreased by 34 from 249 schools to 215 schools in the year 2021-2022. So as student enrollment and building conditions change over time, the district has had to identify and prioritize investments to provide students with the best education possible. So next, I want to just jump into, what is the district trying to achieve through this process? There's three main things. So the facilities planning process will create a plan for new school buildings as well as existing school buildings to do three things. One is to support academic programs. Two is to provide access to learning environments that spark creativity. And three is to meet students' 21st century learning needs. So over the next year, the district will engage the community on challenges related to its school buildings and potential options to address those challenges. So what we hear from the community over the next year will inform a final set of recommendations. And Parsons Environmental and Infrastructure Group, it's an architectural and engineering firm. They will use your recommendations to develop and create the facilities master plan. So the facilities planning process is an important process because it creates opportunities for engagement and community input before any final decisions are made. So what is a facilities master plan and why is it important that we put one together? So a facilities master plan is basically a document that guides the long-term development, improvement, and maintenance of the district's buildings. And the facilities master plan will help the district do two important things. One, it will help the district to prioritize investments for school buildings and to provide a roadmap to guide facilities improvements over the next decade plus. So really a long-term process. So now that we've talked a bit about the process and the final facilities master plan, let's take a moment to review some of the potential outcomes from this process and what types of improvements or changes that you all and the district will consider. So I want to pause here a moment to be really clear that no final decisions about the outcomes have been made at this point. And right now we are in the introduce phase to share the process and the data with everyone and what options to consider that will help guide our conversations in the fall when we have meetings with individual schools. So some of the potential outcomes include building new schools, making improvements to existing buildings, merging schools together, adding academic programs and consolidating schools, among other ideas. So at this point, the district is open to all options, as well as new ideas from community members that are maybe not even listed here. So, and we will really dig into thinking through this together in phase 2 during the school-based meetings in the fall. And lastly, before I hand it back to Kim, I want to highlight that existing plans for new construction, renovations, and remediation will continue as planned during the facilities planning process. So as the district develops its long-term plan with you all, the more immediate improvements that are underway will continue through this process. Okay, so now that we've heard a little bit about the overall goals and we've gotten to hear from you all, we're going to take a deeper dive into the planning process and how the district will work with you all over the next year. So I've already shared a little bit about phase 1 and phase 2. And this whole process is actually 4 phases. Right now we are in the introduce phase. Engage will start in the summer and through the fall. Revise will be in the winter. And finally, plan is going to be in the later winter and the spring of next year. So I'll explain each of these a little bit in more detail. So we are currently in phase 1, or introduce, which is essentially the start of the process. The phase kicked off with the announcement of the first round of community meetings, followed by the launch of the project website in April, which I will share with you all later on in the presentation. And this phase is focused on introducing the process to the school community and beyond, sharing information about school building conditions, explaining how the district measured the quality of school buildings, and explaining how to navigate and understand the web tool that I will share in a moment, and all of the data that is on the web tool. And we will also be collecting some initial feedback in this round. So again, this is really to give you all some tools to understand the district-wide context, to have some time to review it, and then to prepare us for the school-based meetings in the fall. So as part of this phase, we're hosting 9 community conversations such as this one, and we'll be launching an online feedback tool as well later this month. And once the first round of meetings is complete, we will also be sharing an initial summary of what we heard in these first round of meetings. Phase 2 is engage, and that'll start in the summer, but really kick off at the end of August once schools start again. And during phase 2, the district will support, the district with support from PEA and WXY will facilitate virtual meetings to further introduce the process to folks that haven't heard about it yet and share some potential options to address building condition challenges and hear additional ideas, like I mentioned earlier, and collect your feedback. And then notes from each of these meetings will also be compiled and synthesized and shared on the project website so that you all have access to it as well. Revise. Okay, so phase 3 is revise, and this will take place over December and January. And during this phase, we will review and summarize all of the feedback that's been collected so far, and then share out a set of community findings to the public. And then lastly is the plan phase. This is the 4th phase. And we'll hold another round of 9 community conversations like this one, where we will review the process all the way until that point and discuss all of the feedback that's been collected through the school-based meetings, so that we can have sort of a last round of conversations and hear from you all. And then the final round after the community conversations is complete, the district will finalize a set of recommendations, which will then be made publicly available. And as I discussed earlier, the district will then hand those recommendations to Parsons Environmental and Infrastructure Group to inform their development of the final facilities master plan. And here's the full timeline, again, starting March of 2022, all the way through May of 2023. So as we move through this process, there are a few key goals I want to highlight. So the first one is we want to keep the community informed and updated through this process. 2, while today's meeting is more of an introduction to the process, we will collect feedback on analysis and potential options for addressing facility or building conditions, especially at those school-based meetings in phase 2 in the fall. And 3, we want to collect and organize community feedback into a set of recommendations that will inform the final facilities master plan. And before we get into how the district measured the quality of school buildings, I just want to talk us through some of the important roles as a part of this process. So there is the community, the school community, which includes parents, students, principals, teachers, and other district staff. And your role, as you know, is to participate in these various community meetings and provide feedback on potential options and share additional ideas that you have. There's also the broader Philadelphia community, including faith-based organizations like church communities, also community organizations, unions, and other city agencies, which we'll be updating throughout this process as well. And lastly, there's a team of facilitators and analysts who are supporting the district in this process by providing them with additional capacity and technical support. So again, what happens after the multiple rounds of community and school-based meetings? Following all of the meetings, the district will develop a final set of recommendations that's informed by the community input, and those recommendations will be passed to Parsons, who will use the recommendations to create the facilities master plan. All right, so we're going to take a deeper look at how the district measured the quality of school buildings. So throughout this process, there are 4 important scores or measures to keep in mind that are listed here on the screen. There's the Facilities Condition Assessment, or FCA, the Educational Suitability Assessment, or ESA, the Weighted Combined Score, and Enrollment and Utilization. So I'm going to take a moment to define each of these terms and share a bit of related data to give a bit more context. And we know this is a lot of information, so we're going to move somewhat we're going to move somewhat quickly, so don't worry if you don't get it all the first time. I'm going to share with you all the project website, and that has all of the information on there, as well as the scores and some short animations that explain each of these ideas in more detail. And following this section, we're also going to be collecting some feedback and having a bit of Q&A. So if you all have questions, definitely feel free to ask us then. So the breakdown of the scores, the facility condition assessment, the educational suitability assessment, and the weighted combined score all use a rating system from 0 to 100, shown here on this slide. So as you can see, a score of 90 to 100 is considered excellent. That's shown in the dark green, all the way down to a score of less than 60 is considered unsatisfactory. And you can see all the ones in between and all have various different colors to represent them. So keep these ranges in mind. As you'll see, these scores will pop up again and again throughout the rest of the presentation. So let's start with the facility condition assessment, or FCA. So again, it's a score from 0 to 100, and this specifically measures the physical condition of a school's building and systems. And the higher that number, the longer the building will be in service to teaching and learning for staff and students. So when Parsons, the group I mentioned earlier, walked through each and every school in the district and every classroom in every school, their FCA takes into account, for example, is the school's roof leaking? Does the school have proper air conditioning and heating? Is the school properly ventilated? And do the sprinklers work? And that's just to name a few. So let's take a look at how the FCA score breaks down across the entire district. So the table shows the number of schools included in the FPP process that fall within each of the ranges that we introduced earlier. So 25 schools have an excellent FCA score, 22 a good score, 27 a fair score, 55 schools have a poor score, and 73 schools are considered unsatisfactory. So next is the educational suitability assessment. So this is a little different than the FCA. It's still a score from 0 to 100, but what they measured this time is how well the school facilities support the instructional programs or learning at each school. So it's a little different than the FCA. Similar to the FCA, the higher the score, the better the building meets the needs of staff and students. And to share a little bit about how the ESA is different from the FCA, so the ESA score looks at questions like, does the school have well-equipped media centers, art rooms, and gyms? Does the school have the equipment that teachers need? Are the classes the appropriate size for teaching? And the educational suitability assessment also takes into account other important topics such as the traffic pattern outside the schools, parking and access to the school, playgrounds, athletic areas, and then safety issues like lighting and signage and secure entrances. So now let's take a look how the ESA breaks down across the district like we did for FCA. So this table shows the number of schools that fall into each of the ranges. 9 schools are considered have an excellent ESA score, 13 schools have a good score, 33 a fair score, 62 schools have a poor score, and 85 schools are considered unsatisfactory. Okay, so now we have these 2 scores, but for us all to be able to know how your school compares across the district and to be able to compare school building conditions across the district, it's good to also have one score that we can look at. So that brings us to the weighted combined score. And that takes into consideration the last 2 scores that we just mentioned. So it combines the educational suitability assessment and the facility conditions assessment. In this score, the district gave the educational suitability assessment a little more importance because the district believes that the building's ability to support the instructional programs or learning should be given slightly more weight than the importance of the building's physical condition. So just like the FCA and the ESA measures, the higher the weighted combined score, the better the school's ability to support teaching and learning. Okay, so similar to the FCA and ESA, we're going to take a look at how it breaks down across the district. So 10 schools have an excellent weighted combined score, 17 schools have a good score, 36 a fair score, 65 a poor score, and 74 schools are considered unsatisfactory. So now let's take a look at the last piece of data that is important for us to consider, and it's called enrollment and school utilization. Some of you may be very familiar with this already. So first we need to understand, so school capacity is considered the maximum number of students that a school can accommodate based on the educational programming and curriculum offered, and the school building itself. So school utilization is the ratio between the number of students at a school and the school's total capacity. So essentially what we're talking about is if a school has too few or too many students based on what each school could accommodate. So if a school has more students than it can accommodate, it's considered inadequate. The school is over-enrolled. More specifically, if a school's utilization is over 110%, as you see on the screen, that's considered inadequate, shown in red. And if a school's utilization is between 95 and 110, it's considered approaching inadequate. So that's shown in orange. And then a school with the appropriate number of students, or schools with a utilization between 75 and 95 are considered adequate, and that's shown in the green. And then schools can also have too few students. So these schools are called under-enrolled, and more specifically, if a school's utilization is between 60 and 75, it's considered approaching inadequate, and that's shown in the light purple. And the schools with utilization below 60% is considered inefficient, and that's shown in the dark purple. So now, same as before, we're going to take a look at how the utilization breaks down across the district. So this table shows the number of schools that fall within each of the categories. So 85 schools are considered inadequate. 55 schools are approaching inadequate. So schools in these two categories have more students than they can accommodate. 48 schools are adequate, meaning that they have the right number of students based on what the school can accommodate. And then 9 schools are approaching inefficient, and 5 schools are considered inefficient. So schools in these two categories have fewer students than the building can accommodate. And again, we know that this is a lot of information and a lot of numbers and a lot of new terms. So I want to highlight that a copy of this presentation is currently available on the project website. And we will also be posting a recording of this presentation as well. So you can go back and spend time with this information at your own pace. So for purposes of this presentation, we've divided the district into 6 areas based on where people attend high school. So the 6 areas we're using for this process includes Center City, North River wards, Northeast, Northwest, South, and West Southwest. So we recognize that these areas combine some distinct neighborhoods and may not match how everyone thinks about the areas of the city and where you live. But for this process, these areas allow us to look at the conditions of school buildings in more specific areas of the district. So let's start with the weighted combined score. So which again, this is a way of looking at both the facility condition assessment, which measures the physical condition of the school building, and the educational suitability assessment, which measures how well the school supports teaching. So those two numbers together are the weighted combined score. So for each of these ranges, we're looking at how the weighted combined scores break down by region. On this page, we're showing a breakdown for excellent, good, and fair weighted combined scores. Excellent is represented by dark green, good scores by light green, and fair scores by yellow. On the map on the right, you'll see schools with excellent, good, and fair scores. Dark green represents schools with an excellent score, light green, schools with a good score, and yellow, schools with a fair score. And then if we look at the chart on the left, we see that West Southwest has the highest percentage of schools with an excellent weighted combined score with 9%, followed by Northeast with 7%, shown in the dark green. For schools with a good score, we see the highest percentage in the North River wards with 17%, followed by Northeast and West Southwest with 9% each, shown in the light green. And for schools with a fair score, we see the highest percentage of schools in the North River wards with 26%, followed by the South with 23%, shown in the yellow. So we're going to look at that same information, so still weighted combined score for the categories poor and unsatisfactory. So again, you'll see schools with poor and unsatisfactory scores represented on the map on the right. Schools with a poor score are shown in orange, and schools with an unsatisfactory score are shown in red. And then on the chart on the left, we see the highest percentage of school with poor score in the Northwest with 42%, followed by West Southwest with 40% shown in orange. For schools with an unsatisfactory score, we see the highest percentage in Center City with 53%, followed by Northeast with 40% shown in red. We also want to take a look together with you all at how utilization breaks down by region. And just as a reminder, if a school's utilization is inadequate, it means that there are more students than a school can accommodate. And if a school's utilization is adequate, it has the right amount of students. And then if a school has fewer students than it can accommodate, it's considered inefficient. So for schools that have an adequate utilization or have the right amount of students, it's shown in green, we see the highest percentage in Northeast with 43% of schools, followed by South with 36% of schools. And for schools that are approaching inadequate, we see 7% of schools in North River wards, 7% in the Northeast, and 7% in the Northwest, shown in orange. And for schools that are inadequate or have more students than they can accommodate, we see the highest percentage of schools in Center City with 7%, followed by the Northeast and South with 5% shown in red. So now we're going to take a look at a breakdown for the schools that are approaching inefficient or are currently inefficient, meaning that these schools have fewer students than they can accommodate. So for schools that are inefficient, we see the highest percentage in the West, Southwest with 69% of schools, followed by Center City with 43% shown in the dark purple. And for schools approaching inefficient, we see the highest percentage in North River wards with 36%, followed by the South with 33% of schools shown in the light purple. So again, this is a lot of information and a lot of data and a lot of new terms. So we definitely encourage you to visit the project website where this presentation will be posted, along with a recording of the presentation. And then there's also information on the website that explains the terms again. It has informational videos that explains each of these as well. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the web tool, which we've been referring for most of this presentation. So let me share my screen again with the website. And I'm going to walk you through. So once you're on the website, I'm going to take us to the main page, facilities planning process. Once you're on the website, you will want to click on the menu bar on the right-hand side, and then you'll want to scroll down to explore your school, and that takes you to the web tool. And then this will take you to the web tool where you can search your school and find specific information about your school. So what ends up happening is you're going to type in the name of your school, and then you click explore your school, and information for all of that will pop up. So let me show you an example. So we're going to do a couple examples in different areas of the city. So we're going to start with I'm going to do West Philadelphia High School. So you can type the name in of your school. There you go, there it pops up. You click on it, and then it will zoom into that school boundary, and it'll pop up a little chart that shows you all of those scores that we talked about earlier today. So the weighted combined score for West Philadelphia High School, you'll see here is 95, and the facility condition assessment is 100, and the educational suitability assessment is 92. And the current utilization is inefficient, and it's at 40%. And then you can also click, so this is main overview, but you can also click here for more information, and it'll open up almost like an accordion type setup, and you can see more information about each of these. It'll give you the definition, it'll give you more information, and we have that for each of the schools. So you can do that for your school, you can do that for neighboring schools. There's all that information. So then you can go back, you can exit out, and let's do one more example. So I'm going to look up Farrell Elementary School. So here it is, click on it. And again, it'll zoom you out to where it is, bring you back. It'll zoom into that school boundary. And then it'll pop up again, all of that information based on that school. So facility condition assessment is 51. The educational suitability assessment is 63. The weighted combined score overall for the school is 58. And then the current utilization is at 89% or adequate. So when you hover over, it kind of tells you where it is within that rating system. And then you click here for more information, same as the other one, and it'll do the same thing for each of the schools. And then I just want to highlight one last thing. So we also encourage you to spend some time on other parts of the website. So for example, here, what you'll need to know, this explains each of those pieces again. So, if you want to review and get a quick 101 on each of them, it shares the definition. And there's also individual videos that describe each of these things as well, and kind of walk you through what Parsons did at each school to get to that number. So definitely encourage you to take a look at that as well.
So before we move into open conversations and further Q&A and hearing your ideas, let me offer a few reminders. We encourage you to invite your friends and neighbors to attend other community meetings happening this month. A lot of outreach is word of mouth. So please, I know you have your email list to your neighbors. Please invite them to these meetings. We have several meetings scheduled for next week on the 18th and 19th, plus a morning meeting in Spanish on Wednesday the 18th, and then several more meetings on the 24th and the 25th of May. We want you to continue to explore the interactive tool and the project website. The links have been dropped into chat, and we want you to connect with us online and learn additional information. You can also send us emails if you have additional questions. We're going to also send around a feedback form to everyone who participated in this and all of the other meetings this month around the end of May. And then finally, we want to alert you for a message that you're going to receive this summer announcing all of the school-based meetings that are going to be held this fall in September, October, and November. And on our next slide, if you have additional questions, you can see the email address there. Please send us emails to fpp@philasd.org or visit our website for updates. This presentation will also be on the website, so you can access that at a later date.